when you look out into the world, are you okay with everything you see? You know, and coming to this space and creating connections that could last for the rest of your life and help you recognize how powerful and important it is to know the spirit of brotherhood, to experience it, and to be able to take it back into your communities and lead in that way for men that are alone and starving for connection.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Alex Corey, and today's episode is a beautiful expose on the men's group, the Brotherhood, that I've been a part of since March of this year, 2023, at a time when I was feeling very pulled into men's work. There were a number of things crumbling around me. The darker parts of myself seemed to be latching onto me for longer and longer periods of time, interfering with work, interfering with relationships. And I found the new Moon Brotherhood and the leaders, Hunter Ball and Banks Anderson, who you'll meet at the exact right time when it seemed like everyone else was having the exact same issues. This is for you if you've felt a pull into greater levels of just knowing yourself, peeling back the layers that may have been conditioned since childhood, learning more vulnerability, lots of tools for just being a little more open, being able to relate a little deeper with other men and humans in general, really feeling in general emotions and just other things, and being able to set boundaries while still having great interpersonal relationships and just getting to know yourself a little better through accountability, through challenge, through deep listening and understanding, all of those things. At the beginning of this episode, there is a poem, and I invite you to let it set the energy of the podcast as we go into a lot of very personal stories, which I hope relate to you in some way. And this was a fantastic conversation, and I can't thank Banks and Hunter enough for holding this container and allowing men to actually feel supported in Western North Carolina.
Do you think that you can bury me? Do you not know that my life is a seed? Too much of my time have I spent freckled in fury, sunburnt, to push against you, consequently lost in the trying to find myself, to locate this man that has been disturbed by the victim that blames the thief. The anarchy, the rebellion, it is their fault I am not myself, not mine. Fuck that. Forevermore, fuck that. This is what I have found. The only rebellion I can get behind, that I can really get behind, is against complacency entertaining a belief that I do not get to choose. It is upon this notion that the birthplace of the wind, the spirit of the honeybee, and the one that receives the smoke from each and every fireplace can lay their heads down for a long and overdue nap. For it is when the wise ones can dream. That is when our evolution begins. So I call upon you with a fierce heart to lay down with a gentle hand your pitchforks and torches and turn inward to the dark space, the wilderness between stars, and in that hollow unknown of the panther's obsidian fur, to say yes. An uprising does not succeed by pushing horizontally against what is already so low to begin with. I call on you to cut your hands as you collect your shards of broken trust, and to reflect on your life, remembering a beating heart is not and can never be broken. Rise. There is a language we once knew that is beyond knowing, a wisdom that did not need to be spoken or heard. I yield this idea of me as the breeze collects the ash from last night's fire, still warm, and carries it once more to elapse the oak from which it came, as its leaves rally in celebration of death and in service to that language of wisdom for what comes next. For now, I'll let examples of trust explain themselves. I have found my mentor as I let go of who I think I am and allow what is left to be carried towards all I do not know and become the wonder I had lost. This is not a rebellion, is it? I can't be sure. Some things I'll only understand when I no longer need to know.
Today I'm joined by the founders of the new Moon Brotherhood here in Western North Carolina, Banks Anderson and Hunter Ball. And my journey into men's work, or brotherhood, was abrupt and very needed. I came back from a trip with my mom to from Mexico, and within the same week I came back when I was integrating, we did a trip from Mexico City and Teotihuacan East across all of the sacred sites, and I wouldn't do that in the time span that we did it. And again, it was a little stressful. And then I came back, and both of my former partners got married in the same week. So all of my insecurities just got put on a pedestal right to the surface. And then one of the new husbands actually sat on my couch, and I didn't know that was the case at the time, while my ex was doing some permaculture work because we shared common interests. And I got to just listen to him dump for 5 hours. And so I was not in a good place that day because I just got to know him, and all of those things are swirling. And she was the one who actually told me about New Moon Brotherhood.
No way.
You might benefit from a fire circle, because I was like, this is not good. Like, I'm just crumbling, spiraling, all the words for just not being in your body and grounded. So there's a whole lot of resistance, as you can imagine, that day. I was like, but I did not have a father growing up at all. Like, at all. Just literally wasn't in the picture. So in those times, I'm like, I have no idea what to do. There was no example. So brotherhood sounded real good. And that first night was magical. And I basically just like shook and cried everything out of me. And it also happened to be the topic of that evening was sexual shame. Good. We're just gonna go right into it.
That was that day.
That was that day, and I was like, "Wow, okay, this is intense." But it was the only time that I felt supported. I was like, I don't have to worry or care about having a guard up, right? Like, it was the only place I was like, oh, all my filters can come down. And that's what I love about the group and you guys specifically is it's like the leveler, I feel. It's the great leveler between men. It's like everyone's got the same problems. People that I hold on pedestals in communities that were around Orange County are like, oh, everyone has these core wounds and core issues that we deal with as men. So how did you each come to men's work? How would you define men's work, and how did you come to men's work and form New Moon Brotherhood?
Yeah, and I just want to say that, like, it's amazing to do this for many years and see, like, when one man, there's always this tension at first, and then one man chooses to open himself and to risk everything that he's been conditioned to believe. And it creates something for the whole group, that kind of leadership. And it softens everyone and actually creates the thing that we need with each other, which is the level of support to hold each other and support each other and challenge each other through whatever's necessary to really grow into who we want to be. So I love that you got to have that experience.
Yeah, it was a powerful week.
Transformative week. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. How'd you find your own men's work, or that you needed that? How'd you find that you needed that?
Maybe I'll start. That's a good question. I don't really remember the timeline, but it was 2018, 2019 range. And I kind of have an opposite experience. I grew up with my father. My parents split up, and me and my two younger brothers, we lived with our dad. which is like really uncommon in like the divorce marriage world, that the kids go with the dad. So I had a lot of experience with male energy, and yet I'm still wounded. You know, like I still have my wounds and my pain points. I think something that was the turning point for me was when I was in a relationship with a woman, and we were going through a lot of conflict, and I would turn to women for like for help and for like consoling and emotional rescuing. And she reflected it back to me. She was like, "Hey, what are you doing? Like, you're just hanging out with women. It feels like you're flirting with them. It feels like you like want to be in a relationship with them." I was like, "No, what are you talking about? That's not happening." And after sitting with it, I was like, "Oh, okay, wow. Actually, yeah, I am always going to the feminine for help, for support." And at that same time, I was going through a lot. I was like I had gotten arrested, or I got charged with a felony, and I was on probation, and I was doing community service. And I was just like in a real dark hole, and I started listening to a podcast called the Rising Man Podcast with Jetty Azuma. And it was the first experience where I was listening to men's work and like what different healthy masculinity could look like. And I was like, oh, this is it. Like I found it. And so I had like 60 hours of community service to do, and I was just listening to this podcast, you know, as I'm like in the Buncombe County Animal Shelter, like cleaning the windows and like picking up dog shit and stuff. And so from that point, I was also living in community, and I just started my own group because I was going through a lot in the relationship, and I was just like I had a bunch of guy friends, and I just got everyone together, and I was like, yo, this is what I'm going through. Like, is anyone else experiencing this? Like, I'm like, I need help. Like, I'm freaking out. I need support. I feel like I'm alone in my experience. And it ended up, I wasn't alone, like you just like said in your story. And that just became kind of this pillar, and just kept having it, and it evolved. It was more of like I was facilitating of like what my experience was, and then guys would bring their stuff in, and that it just kind of evolved from there. So that's how I've gotten involved in it, and it's just been such a big pillar for me in my healing work and how I relate to myself. And then we met, and that's another story. Yeah. But yeah, that's a little about me. And the question of like what is men's work is like really a good question, because I don't even know. Like I'm like, I don't even know what we're doing sometimes. Like, what am I doing? We're just wounded men leading other wounded men throughout. It's like experience that is life. But we have the courage to create a container, and we're really committed to this like mission to change culture.
Changing culture through like a healthy version of masculinity, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. Like changing culture through brotherhood and like creating a community of men that are accountable with each other, and that want to be different and show up differently than their fathers did, you know, or their brothers are. And the desire is easy to have, right, to be different, but the action steps, right, and the accountability and the integrity is something that we do with each other really well, and has really helped us grow. And we're just kind of wanting to bring that to a larger population. Yeah.
It's needed and appreciated. A lot of people, myself included, have that, why do I have to pay for things? It's just guys getting together, and you're like, you pay for leadership and someone else holding space for you. Like, this is almost therapy. Like, it takes a lot of organization and a lot of awareness and presence, right? If I even have to be on the phone with someone mildly for even a half hour, the amount of attention it takes to actually listen and hear someone is a lot.
Yeah, to like presently be there.
Right. So just I didn't know what hold space meant until I ran into this. I was like, oh, it's so I don't have to, right? So I don't have to be aware of everything going on.
Totally.
I can actually just be more feminine, really, and just what we would think of as feminine.
Right.
And I can actually let all of my emotions come through. I don't have to. I'm held.
Yeah, totally. The structure is there,
Right.
and then you can relax, and you do a really good job at that because you hold a lot already in your life, and when you show up, I like totally see you and feel you. You're just like, yeah, I'm here. I'm in my chair. Like, I don't need to worry about you or you or you. Like, I'm just with me,
Right.
and that's and then you're receptive and open, and so I appreciate the trust that you have with us and yourself to be able to go there, because not everyone goes there. People show up and they're still like rigid, they're still holding their structure, and they're not able to relax, and
It's hard.
it's hard.
I mean, it's
not easy.
It's hard to decondition your entire day, let alone life, of having to be strong all the time and literally just have all the filters and guards up. And it's hard to even that the resistance for me is even to be like, it's safe. You can let them down. Like, no one will judge you. I think that's what got, especially I didn't have much conflict growing up, which is part of my masculine integration now, is like martial arts or some sort of confrontation practice. Like, working out is different, but like actually against someone without the intention of necessarily physical harm, just the confrontation. It's tricky to just be vulnerable because that doesn't feel strong. Right? There's no guilt or shame that will be thrown at you as guys, especially military is probably the closest thing I can think of for like brotherhood that most people without us such a set container. But whenever I think of that, I think of a lot of don't be a pussy, like guilt, shame, judgment potentially coming at you. And that's what isn't there with this type of container, is there will be no guilt, shame, judgment. And that allows it to come down.
Yeah, totally. I mean, shame is so tricky. Like, we talk about it so much, and it's like such an undercurrent thing that I know I live with, right? And just with men, it's not even aware that it's shame, and that it's been running their life the whole time through the social conditioning. So yeah, it's a whole lifetime process to unwind that narrative of the shame. And we're not going to bring shame, but the individual will,
right?
And that's where the reflection of like, oh dude, you're like, this is how you're viewing yourself right now, like this is what you're in. And it's not therapy, but it quickly can turn into it. And we also see a lot of men, like, they come to a fire circle or breathwork and they realize that they need therapy. We're just like, oh, great. Like, that's a conduit, for action, for awareness. Yeah.
How did you come to your men's journey? Knowing yourself.
And I do want to say just that this part about, like, there's so much about military that does support brotherhood, and this don't be a pussy thing. There is a flavor of it that can be supportive if it's challenging a man towards where he wants to go, but it can be pushed into shame, right? And so those words aren't necessarily supportive, but the flavor that brotherhood can offer a challenge is so alive, and if it's coming from a grounded and present place, it can really be a big support.
Awesome.
But my journey somewhat stemmed also from some time in jail, and just witnessing men harm each other. And another, which is a kind of a bigger, vast story, but I was in a breathwork session. I was taking a training with L.V. Orr, who's a widow of Leonard Orr, who founded breathwork by recognizing he had birth trauma, and he got into a bathtub because it resembled the womb, and he put a snorkel on and he breathed, and he like came back to his birth, you know, and got in touch with that place, and he slowly picked apart what it was and found out it was the breath, you know, and the bathtub definitely supports. But I was in a training with her and just getting completely cracked open, and during one session I just started sobbing, and I was like, what the hell's going on? And I was like kicking and screaming, and there were like multiple women there actually witnessing me in the training, and my body was like sweating and profusely shaking, and I recognized I got in touch with my pain, and it was all starting to come to the surface, stuff I had never really known about. And then I realized, like, this is, my dad has this, and his dad, and then it was every man, you know, carries this immense amount of pain that gets so suppressed. And I had this hope that I could cry enough tears to replenish the earth and all the harm that had happened. And I realized I couldn't. And I got out of the session, and my friend Adam, who was also taking the training, he was a Australian man, he was like, start a men's group. And I was like, I can't like do that. I don't have any training, you know. I can't do that. And he was like, shut up. And it was brotherhood, you know. And I was like, okay, like if you'll help me, we can do like a day-long workshop and just try it out. And he went and grabbed his computer and started taking notes, and I was like, we don't have to do this like right now. And he's like, I'm gonna light a fire under your ass because I know it's important to you. And love you, Adam Poole. And that really started it all, you know. And I also played team sports growing up with men and was captain on various teams and stuff, and that definitely plays a big role, because I see like men getting together as this, we have a shared, when we get together like a men's movement and we have a shared vision and it's connected to our hearts, beautiful shit can happen. Like really, really powerful things can happen. And that's what I love, you know. It's my favorite thing about gathering is to go on that journey together. And it's intense. You know? We trigger each other, and, but that's a beautiful part of the mirror. And then before I met Hunter, like a few people told me I should meet him. I think you need to meet Hunter. Like, this guy, like, interesting. Like, I randomly went and got dinner with one of my dad's like old friends, and he was like, "You need to meet this guy Hunter Ball." I was like, "Okay." And I went to a few weeks later. I went to a meditation retreat, and I met him. And I remember being like kind of intimidated, like I'm supposed to meet this guy, and he's like all tall and confident and stuff, and we like connected. I remember he like gave me his journal, and he was like, write your number down. I was like, okay. And we never talked after that, and then we ran into each other at a coffee shop. And I was like, I want you to come to my men's group. And he was like, I was in a men's group this morning. And I was like, oh, cool. And eventually we got together, and I joined his circle, which was a closed group, and I was running my own at the time and taking a training, actually. It was such a good time. But we had like a maybe sat together for a year, and then went on a retreat together. We all created like a little mini retreat for our group, and we like did a bunch of processing. It was really powerful. And at like 3 a.m. maybe, me and Hunter like stood up and shook hands and agreed to like do something bigger. And after that, we sat down every week together and started planning a workshop, which we never really did. It was kind of funny. We like mapped out this whole workshop, and had like my mentor at the time help us. And but during one of those sessions, we were like, we need to just start an open men's group. And It's like let's just do it on the new moon. Call it the New Moon Brotherhood.
Yeah.
And that's how it started.
Yeah.
And the first session, I think close to 20 men came out, and it was intense.
Yeah. It was
Really intense,
a lot.
really powerful.
Yeah. It doesn't sound like a big number until you're in a circle, a tight circle, and you're just like, oh, this is a lot of energy.
It was dark, you know. It's like in November, October, November. It was cold. We had a fire, and it was just like, whoa. We're just looking around, just like, wow. There's a lot of men here.
Men were getting naked.
Yeah.
Looking at their shame for the size of their penis, and
we learned a lot. I'll say about that.
Yeah.
We learned a lot about
Men
how to
getting
hold
triggered.
that space. Yeah, they got triggered, and but that was
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Yeah, about this time 2 years ago, and because so many men were asking us, "Hey, do you know a circle?"
Yeah.
Like we were both having our individual closed circles, and we're just like, "There's so many. There's the desire and the want there.
Yeah.
So let's just create the structure, and then see who shows up."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why'd you call it New Moon?
Because we did it on the new moon.
What does the new moon represent?
Well, Banks, if you didn't tell out there that from his poem, he loves the darkness, and he loves the challenge. So the new moon is the darkest night of the year, and we encourage men to bring their stuff, bring what they're suppressing, bring what they're not wanting to bring into the light. And that's a big intention, right? That's like a really powerful intention, and it's a lot to hold that container, and it takes a lot of courage for men to step into that place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
so
darkness.
really value and honor all the men that have come out to our fire circles on the new moon, because we definitely bring some intensity.
Yeah. Well, and it was interesting to see in myself obviously there was still resistance when I first started, but when I was in darkness, I needed it and craved it. And then during peak summer months when I was in abundance, I was just like, yeah. I was like, this is what happens every time. It's like you need it when you don't think you do. With myself, whenever I wasn't wallowing in darkness, I'm like, oh, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, do it anyway.
Yeah.
Because it's still there. It's just not in your face staring at you.
Totally.
Still there.
Good awareness.
Underneath. Yeah.
We've
I still
always,
miss them.
we've always got work to do,
Right.
even
Yeah.
when life's abundant, you know.
Yeah.
And also the new moon it's the darkness, and we were all born from darkness,
Yeah.
you know. And it's a grief we all carry, is like leaving the womb.
Yeah.
And so it does hold this intention to return to that core self as well.
You said something at one of the first breath works that I did, one of the first times that I did a breath work at all. We'll get into that later. But you said you were tired of seeing loneliness in every man's eyes that you looked at. I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. Well, no one looks at it in the eyes anymore when you're just walking. But yeah, there is I can sit in the darkest thing I can think of isn't. So I've had clinical depression before, and the step before that I recognize in myself is usually aimlessness or purposelessness.
Yeah.
Those are rough as a guy. That feels almost depressing. Where if you're just like wobbling or hesitating, or you're just like, I don't know what I'm doing, and you call it the North Star.
Yeah.
But why do you think that's such a common theme in men now?
The loneliness
Yeah.
and the aimlessness,
Yeah.
I guess. Well, I'll say that we have to find our purpose, and it's not just told to us by someone. And we also we're not in a culture where we go through a proper training to find it. And my belief is that it is within our darkness, because that's where we return to our core from coming to a dark place within ourselves. And a lot of that is based on our upbringing. So really, if I zoom out enough, we are raised in a culture that's perfect to illuminate our purpose. but it's very indirect. And I believe that purpose connects men to a sense of belonging, which is, in my belief, more important than purpose. But it gives us an opportunity to give to something greater than ourselves. And when I can contribute, I'm a part of society. I'm a part of community.
Usually if I can find something that I still care about, if I'm sort of at the core, right? If all the fluff gets whittled away or gets cried out and I'm just feeling dark and about to spiral, if I can find something there that I care enough about, that'll hold through everything. Through the good times, like that's really easy to hold and maintain through abundance. So if I can find something when I'm at that point that I actually care about, like a lot of the, since life is easier now than it has been usually, but just convenience, it's hard to have to find something you actually care about unless you're sitting in a very dark place within yourself and all of the convenience and the fluff and the things that you're told to care about disappear. That's usually if I can find something like health that I actually care about there, that'll hold. Or that's as good as something I have found to hold.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's helpful to have something to hold on to.
Yeah.
Right. And past the judgment of whether it's internal or external,
right.
You know, I don't want to even like, I don't think that's necessary to like analyze. But through the darkness to like have an orientation, you know, and men love to contribute.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you want something done, like ask a man, you know, they just want to be of service.
Yeah, utility.
Right? Yeah, they want to fix it, they want to help, they want to be of service, right? Because it gives them a purpose.
Yeah.
It gives them a direction, and then it gives them a form of value as well. Like, so I think that's been a good thing for me to understand. And purpose is a hot topic right now, you know. It's like, to be of purpose, and I felt a lot of pressure around them. Like, oh God, I need to know what my purpose is. I need to know what my gifts are for my wounds, you know, to present them into a package for the world to, you know, to heal. And now I'm like in a place of like, well, what are my passions? You know, what am I really passionate about? Versus trying to like the pressure of like, what is my soul's purpose here on this earth?
That is pressure.
Yeah, so much pressure.
So much pressure.
So much pressure, and it's a good business marketing, you know, because it feels good to hear and to absorb. Like, oh, I'm gonna find out my soul. This person's gonna help me find my soul purpose. You know.
Yeah, I had a similar. Speaking of utility, I was having this conversation with my partner like 2 days ago, and I had the same thing that you mentioned earlier, where I would just basically be women, my close women friends would get all of my emotions. So I didn't have any guys to go into the remote depths with. Like everything was surface level. Had a lot of sports culture, a lot of drinking. No one was going even like a layer down. Yeah. So I would always turn to women because they were emotionally available.
Totally.
And then my partner was like, this is an issue. It's like all of these women are in your space. What are you doing? And I was like, oh. And it was a utility thing. I was afraid of not being useful.
Yeah.
And I was always open for them to do the same thing, whether or not it served me or them. It was just, I wanted to feel useful. She's like, you know, you have worth without being useful in the ways you think you do. And I was like, oh, it hurts.
Right.
Yeah, that's a core program.
Totally.
You have to be you hear women's just wives, they're like, oh yeah, he's useful around the house, he does this. Like the worth is almost tied to things you can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
a rough one.
I was just talking about this in therapy yesterday. Like, what is it like when my worth or your worth is not tied to what you do?
Right.
You know, then how do you feel about yourself?
Right.
Not tied to like what you can create and what you like can hold emotionally, energetically. But when all that's dissolved, right? You're talking about like being in the depths of the darkness. When all of it's gone, like, who are you actually? And how do you feel about yourself? And I think that's been a big thing for me personally of illumination through men's work and holding up mirrors. Because like if I like really admire Banks, he's gonna show me the insecurities that I have, right? And like actually how I feel about myself when no one's looking, right? When no one's talking to me. So I think that's a powerful experience in men's circles, and especially in closed containers. Like in my circle, we were together for it was like 3 years, just like consistently together. We took breaks. Some of us would like go traveling and whatnot, but to have the consistency and the depth, and to know someone consistently, and to know their shadows, and to know when they're bullshitting you, is really good. It's really juicy, and it's really helpful to have that outlet to be emotionally supported, right, by other men.
Yeah.
Because shout out to the women, like y'all reflect us. You know, they just reflect like what is actually needed to for the growth of ourselves.
Painful feedback.
Painful feedback, right? Because it brings up the insecurities, right? They see right through it, and they hold us in so much love, and
right. And women are also kind of the ultimate judge. That was pointed out. It's just like it's just literal reproductive selection. It's just like there isn't much more of a harsh judge than they control, or whether or not your genetics will get passed on. So that's a rough one.
I hadn't thought about
that. That is the usually in high school, the thing that a woman will say to you that'll cut is loser, right? Which I internalized whenever someone said loser as basically I wouldn't have a kid with you, so to speak. It was just like you won't have children. It's the gateway to having kids. And it's a very weird concept to think about.
Deep abandonment.
Yeah.
It's like primal right there.
Abandonment of the family.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, women can cut.
And they're powerful.
Yeah.
A big expression. I know it, and with my partner, like, she can get a very big expression, and like it happened a few days ago, and now the more that I can honor my masculinity in that time and be more of a witnessing consciousness, and to see and just be present for what comes, but not be so reactive, I can actually slow down and hear what's behind some of the judgments and projections in her feedback, which was really illuminating to me. Like, she helped me see after I like decoded it. I heard, you're acting out of integrity with this thing, and you're giving a lot of energy to it, and it's taking away from what's really important to you. And I was like, and it hurt, and it took me some time to process.
Why did it hurt?
Because well, the way that it comes out, like her delivery, definitely hurts. It pulls out some of my insecurities, but also to recognize I'm acting out of integrity. It's impacting myself and people around me that I love and care about, like my 3-month-old daughter, you know, and so much. It's like it took me some time to process and stop blaming her. Because I had to make changes that then impacted other people, you know? And I wanted to blame her because I'm scared of those people judging me now. So, and I think that we just process emotions a little bit slower.
Way slower.
Because we're just,
It takes me 3 days. My partner can do it in about 2 hours. And I'm just like, wow, okay. So I was just like, give me like a couple days. It's so much slower. Well, they've been doing it. Like, they're usually just more aware, at least, of emotions. And I'm new to this. Like, I just buried them for 31 years.
And you also have to think about, like, we just operate differently, right? But also, like, we went off to war. We risked our lives, you know. And women stayed at home and raised the children and were with community, and they had each other to support through that challenging time for them, being alone, raising children, you know. And so there's a big split, and it's kind of been this way. And we are often putting our bodies on the line to try to fix culture, whether it's through conditioning that's not really in service of our own hearts or not, men are holding most of the dangerous jobs.
Oh yeah.
That build our culture or protect it, whether it is in service of everyone or not.
Right.
There is that attempt to, and so we remain up here so often, and so much beauty comes out of it. I mean, we're sitting in this space. I assume it's air conditioned.
It is air
You know, with these refrigerators
Yeah.
that store our food, and so much of that has been created through this craftsmanship of the mind. And it can be challenging
Yeah.
if we don't drop into our bodies, and that's a big part of what we're doing is coming back to the wisdom of our body.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it there. Yeah, because I think that's really like that is our North Star, and like that's what we've always brought, and that is to get men out of their heads and into their hearts and bodies. Because I actually love when I get to say it. I'm like, I don't care about your existential soapbox. Like, I don't want to hear it, you know?
That's fun.
Like, I don't care how you view the world and like what you're like interpreting things as.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me. Everyone's got such a difference, you know? I want to know how you're feeling, you know? Like, what is it like for you to exist in your body and how you're experiencing your relationships? That's what I really care about. I really get off when I get to say that. And so, I mean, we're learning, like we have the experience of like somatic understanding and trainings with like how to get men out of their heads into their bodies. Breathwork is extremely helpful, right? To like bypass that. And then I love to like think about like, we don't want them to completely get out of their head, right? Because it's like the head and the heart, and then in between is the throat, and that's the expression, right? So it's like how to find that in balance to then communicate what you need, like how we can be of support for each other. And yeah, it's a process. Like it's so new, you know. It's just so new as a culture, as a community, to get out of our heads so much. And I mean, we see it all the time, you know, like people will be like, you know, we'll have a prompt, and then I can immediately tell like where they're at, you know, and I can tell in myself, you know, like if I'm in that session or if I'm like speaking and Banks is like, where are you at? You know, where are you at? And still figuring that out of how to really like drop into the body and feel from the heart. I don't know of a perfect equation right now, you know, to do that. But I know that that's what is really needed from like the whole culture of men and men's work.
How to stay grounded almost more often than not.
Yeah. How to stay grounded in the body, you know, and speak from that place and operate from that place. Because it's like once like there's like a solidness in the body, then and practicing like the heart softening, right? It's like this, I'm on this big kick of the compassionate warrior, right? The lover and the warrior, and wanting to have a strong body, strong boundaries, but also softness, so that we can receive feedback, we can receive love, and we can give it as well.
And I want to just take a moment to elaborate for those that might not understand.
Yeah.
When Hunter talked about his excitement to bring men down into their bodies, and he's like curious about how they're feeling and what the sensations are there. To go a little further into it is, that is the darkness that we move towards. For a man to soften, to get out of his head, which is a place of control, and to surrender into what's really, really going on. And to use that space as a primary function for deliberately bringing in purpose or mission in a man's life. Because often men get lost in the head, and there's so much, that beautiful tool of being able to fix things can spin us out deeply. And when we return to the body, we reconnect with our darkness, which is like where we came from, our self. And it may seem dark, but there's so much beauty. That's what I experience. It's like an immense amount of beauty when a man opens to himself. But it does feel dark and scary because it's mystery.
Yeah.
But darkness isn't necessarily a bad thing. And also, like shadow, this idea of shadow, it's kind of an unapproachable thing. Because we look at the light, but I hear a lot of men or humans in general talk about like knowing their shadow, which I think is complete bullshit. I think of the shadow as like an unapproachable surprise that usually navigates unconsciously our actions to try to get love in some way, shape, or form. And so this return to the body, opening to self, and then a redirection of the life, of where they're headed in their life. And I think that if a man doesn't know what his purpose is, then his purpose is finding his purpose.
Right.
It's very simple. And I didn't know that when I was looking for my purpose, but now reflecting on it, I'm like, oh, I kind of went crazy looking for my purpose.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that I did. And I did spin myself out a bunch, but eventually gained tools to come to a better place.
Yeah. Would you say the shadow is at all similar to like just unconscious programs you're running? Just things that are running you that you have no awareness about?
Yeah.
At all?
Yeah. It's like it's an archetype.
Yeah.
That we don't really know is running.
Right.
And it's impacting our lives, and it's impacting the people we love. Which it impacts my child. Because right now I'm like epically sleep deprived, which is why I like totally forgot what I was saying earlier.
I'll do it. 3 months old will do it.
I'm sure you'll cut that out, right? And and there's a new level of intensity coming in me, and it's a rage.
Yeah.
And there's this little tiny innocent being who I love and adore so much, and she is pulling it out of me. Family in general is as well. And I'm not saying that it's all bad and challenging. There's so much beauty, but this is just one flavor of it. And it's pulling out my shadow. It's the greatest reflector I've ever had. Yeah. And I'm like scared.
Yeah.
And because I'm reaching this and connecting with a new level of intensity, I am not fully in trust with myself. So I'm learning to build trust, and I'm asking for a lot of support because it's scary to me to get in contact with it. And so now I have this opportunity because they've helped me begin to see this thing that I didn't really know that was in there, that I was suppressing. And now it's a beautiful journey that I get to start making conscious.
Yeah, it's kind of weird whenever you think you're an adult and you're like, I have this figured out, and then you're like, oh, I have almost none of this figured out.
Yeah, if you're paying attention,
right?
It's like there's a new layer coming online
all the time. So we do breath work like every other week, and I've done more breath work this year than I have in my entire life because I didn't know it was a thing. But the first time I had it, I was like, what the actual... Just breathing. I had flashbacks to the 3 times I almost died. Whenever you're just like, what's your why? And I just went there. And we do you said it was similar to holotropic breathing, the type that we practice, right? It's intense.
Yeah.
But like just by breathing, I had flashbacks the 3 times I almost died. And then it goes deeper and deeper every time. But like, what? Why does that happen? It's just breathing. Is it just nervous system regulation? Like I don't understand how breathing does that.
Well, I like to think, and it's not just breathing,
right?
It's conscious, connected breathing, and I like to think of the 4 elements as God manifests, and so it's like breathing in a wisdom that is greater than our human psyche. Wiser than our human psyche. And there's also a beauty because in this practice we hold hands. Yeah. And there is an intensity. For those that may not know, holotropic breathwork is a style that's a little more intense. and this isn't holotropic. It's actually like a practice from India. And as we breathe together, we're going on this journey of brotherhood together where we have a shared vision, which is to connect to our North Star. So something that's really important to us. It may be what we protect, what we want to protect. It could be our inner child. It could be our actual children or our families or our communities or this earth. It could be connected to our purpose. And it could also be connected to finding our purpose. Like, or just getting a place to project our anger. Right? And so it's a moment to connect with the intensity. And we use the concept of the warrior to generate this and to pull it out of men, because it's highly uncomfortable. As you both know. There's a lot of discomfort that comes up physically, emotionally, spiritually. It's a great way to meet the edge. And as we do this practice, there is also a challenge to let go of the self and to actually express what's stagnant in the body. Because I believe a part of masculinity in this like fix-it mentality that we can get into is that we really can't live with stagnancy or complacency. We have, there's something innate in us to create and produce and serve. And that can be very supportive to culture, and it can also be very destructive. And so men come and they fully let their anger out. And this is an opportunity to connect with the anger, which I know my own story is like, anger is bad. It's not good. So my body wants to suppress it as much as possible. And then I get to moments where I explode. And I've had moments where I've screamed at my partner, and it's not who I want to be. And so having the opportunity to come and empty it out in a productive way, that we use the anger. I'm just using anger. It could be grief. It could be a lot of things.
Rage.
But I'm using, rage.
I haven't felt rage in a while before doing those. Yeah.
And we use it to connect to that North Star, something that we're moving towards, something that's important to us. And we use our hearts. We really connect to our hearts beforehand, And so this idea of the warrior who can stay alive and focused on where we want to head, even through discomfort, creates a container for the softness within our hearts. And then right when we complete the breath work and move into a softer place, men crack wide open.
Oh yeah.
If not already.
Puddles every time for me. Just puddles.
And what I believe and see them telling themselves is, I can hold myself through something challenging, and I'm safe in my body. It's safe to be me. It's safe to have anger, to grieve. And
that cultivates trust,
exactly,
right, in oneself, and love for oneself too. And I think the trust is really important. It's like a kind of an unsung wound that's happening, or that is all, maybe it's always been there, but the trust in oneself to go through something hard and be with others through it as well.
Do you think that trusting yourself is actually the prerequisite before you can trust others? Or if you have a problem trusting others, maybe you don't actually fully trust yourself?
Totally. I think there's something there. I'm not too versed in it.
I don't know,
but I think there's definitely something to look at right there. I don't know if one happens before the other. I don't know if it's easier to trust others than it is to trust yourself.
That might be.
Because it's like you're giving your power away in a way. It's just it's easier to give someone else love than to give myself love.
Right. We were looking at Atomic Habits before, and that's kind of the new phrase is self-confidence is literally just the ability to trust yourself. Building small promises kept to yourself. Like, not hitting snooze on an alarm clock is probably the
Right.
easiest example. Just like, can you trust yourself to wake up? And before you start building bigger things, if you want to build bigger things, building small. A lot of guys, myself included, just have problems believing that they can actually execute something that they promised because they don't have a lot of small wins
Yeah.
under their belt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
which is very eroding if you actually don't believe yourself when you say something.
Oh yeah, then you've self-sabotaged
Yeah.
yourself.
All
You know, you've set yourself up for failure already.
And now we're kind of moving into accountability
Right.
Yeah.
because it's the builder
Mm-hmm.
of trust within us, or self-esteem even.
Yeah, and on that, like, it's like the accountability with others. It's like, it's okay to need help, right? To like trust yourself, right? It's like getting away from like the lone wolf
Yeah.
of like, oh, I need to like trust myself and figure it out on my own and not have help from other people. So like brotherhood and these communities that we're creating is like, let's create accountability with each other to help oneself, right? It's like I'm using someone else to help me, and that's okay, right? It's not like this like shameful thing that I like, oh, I'm not powerful or strong enough that I like can't do it on my own. It's like, fuck trying to keep doing it on your own.
Yeah.
Like really like reach out for help, and that actually takes more strength,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what comes of a life of someone who tries to do everything alone?
Loneliness.
Yeah.
I mean, I was doing that for a while. 3 businesses. I was trying to do everything myself, and I was like, this is not sustainable. It's recipe for just giving up and getting burnt out.
And yeah, and like it's Hunter and I, and also Nir, Asaf, and Eloan Faye running the new Moon Brotherhood, and we have our conflicts, you know,
All the time.
They happen regularly, and we're pretty like we've gotten pretty efficient in how we work through them. We used to like struggle a little more, and they would last longer or be bigger, and now we just kind of move through them. And though it's challenging at times, it's a beautiful reflection, and it makes their presence in this work for me, it really holds me accountable to embodying the work. So having them here is so much better than doing this alone.
Yeah, especially if you're living a very full life as well, raising a family. Like, it's very hard to hold everything by one person.
Yeah, it's like we take turns energetically like holding the container.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, all right, who's got the most capacity?
Right.
And then that person takes it on, and then it kind of just shifts. And that's really nice. It could be, it is challenging too, because we all have like really like small different ideas of how to do things and whatnot, but it's something like our values are all the same. So that makes it helpful. I'm curious how your experience of being in like New Moon Brotherhood spaces has affected the way that you show up with men in your life, and how that's, because you said you were doing the lone wolf
Right.
mentality. So like, what's different now?
I cut to more important things way faster. So I go for it's almost a fear of being seen. If I tried to really listen or see someone, it was a fear of like, oh, they're going to do this back to me potentially. So my male relationships are much different now, and there's almost a cultivated, it might be a little uncomfortable at times, like it's not purely fluffy. So the male relationships that have come in since that are just way deeper. And that has allowed me to not actually have to use women for emotional support anymore, which is very nice, because it's a very weird pattern whenever someone points that out. So now I have multiple very close friends who I can actually talk about the richness of life with, and it won't be overwhelming. Yeah. Or presence in general. It's actually just a good honing mechanism for me to just be more present in general, to not be in my head all the time, and to not actually have to be defensive, because I'm a very intellectually debative and combative person. And it kind of gets me off, but it doesn't serve anything ever, really. So it's allowed me to just have fewer guards up, and therefore have more energy, because less of my energy is spent deflecting things or preparing for some sort of back and forth, where I almost don't care as much about things that don't matter anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just like, meh.
And I just want to like take a moment to appreciate you, because growing up as a child, not having a father around, you were dependent on your mother solely, and she can only do so much.
Right.
And for you to actually lean in to growing into trust with men again, you're healing lineage of pain that who knows what your father carried. And now you're in this place continuing to open, because you're continuing to come.
Yeah.
And we see you there. And it's not only just for you, because now you have your partner, and she gets to have relief from being the only person that shows up for you, because you're opening to the rest of the world. And while that can be challenging for men, because often like there is a new paradigm for women that I see and experience, that they don't really want to be the emotional support system for men, because they've had to do it for so long. And so for us to be able to gather together and hold each other is really healing for everyone.
Yeah. And she has expressed that she actually loves seeing me cry, because it usually means I'm actually moving things through me, and she knows it's not getting repressed all the time. And she loves hearing all of it, but she also loves not having to do it. Right? She's just like, well, if I don't want to do it, I know I don't have to. And then when she's just crumbling, then I'm better at just holding it for her and not getting triggered from something she said.
Yes.
Not because it's literally not about me. And even if she says something, I'm just like, this is not mine. No, this is mine. That's a big one. It's just figuring out what's mine. And if someone says something, be like, just because it triggered it, is like, this is not. I don't have to work through everything. I don't have to heal people, so to speak. Right? I'm only responsible for myself. Yeah, the boundaries thing was the big one for me. It was just, don't have to heal or fix everyone, because I'm the utility thing, natural fixer healer.
Totally.
I don't actually have to. It's better if I don't, because I will have more capacity for things I care about, for the people who I actually should be having capacity for, that I've chosen to. I had 2 nights ago, I was doing a mini version of breathwork, just like a curated playlist, which is still amazing to me, that just a curated playlist with even soft breathing, like belly breathing.
Totally.
I erupted, and it was about anger, and I erupted in anger in my room at 8:30, screaming at my dad, like pounding my bed, generated tremendous amount of heat, bawled and screamed. I was like, wow, okay. Took 33 years.
Yeah, totally.
Right. Totally. I was waiting, because all of my former partners were like, you might have to deal with that.
Right?
It hadn't been a thing. I was just like, I didn't really have a dad, but my mom was pretty masculine. They're like, yeah, sure. And it hadn't been an issue until it was. And then it just like is now erupting, but in safe spaces. Like I'm just pounding my bed and like starting a martial arts thing. So the breath is, I still don't fully understand the full power of digging through layers just by being with yourself.
I mean, well, that's it. It's like you're being with yourself with the breath. You know, it's like you're taking time, a lot of time, to just be with yourself.
Yeah.
And it's the continued pattern of breathing allows all the feelings to actually like be observed and exposed.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're not like just existing in our world or our mind, just like, okay, here, got this list of things to do. And I think that's why it's like tough. I mean, you're a massage therapist, and I imagine it's tough for people to fully relax, you know, because they're just in their head. And the breath work is such a biohack into feeling.
Right.
It's like, okay, what is actually here? In this moment, it can change every single time. But the breathwork has profoundly impacted me, and I crack open, and I don't really get these downloads. There's a lot of headiness with breathwork that people can come into, oh yeah, I'm gonna give myself all this oxygen, and then that's gonna open up these pathways and channels, and yada yada. It's such a great cracking experience for me. I'm just anytime I cry, and I'm just cool, I'm releasing something. I don't know what it is, but it's in my body.
You don't have to, right?
Yeah, I don't have to. It feels good,
right?
It just feels good to completely let myself go there.
The last thing when you said what have I gotten from it was, I used to be really, really good at compartmentalizing, probably just mostly emotions, but just different aspects of life, and I'll deal with this later. That doesn't happen anymore, and then that's not necessarily a good thing for me if I have a ton of busyness in the day, because then it sucks energy to process it. But the thing that's come with the actual showing up all the time is I move through things faster. So if I'm stuck and I'm spiraling, something's ruminating and just sucking energy from me, then I'll do a 20-minute breath work, and I'll literally just cry it out, and then I have my energy back. Wow. So it's the tools to have things move through me faster and not have to just grab it and wallow in it for 3 days, which is what was happening when I first found you guys. I was just stuck in it for days, and it was just ruining what I actually wanted to do. But so now it never goes away, right? It still hits, but it moves faster, more tools, which is indispensable. There was one thing I keep forgetting and it keeps popping up, so I'm going to ask you. Yeah. Aubrey Marcus had a podcast yesterday on IFS, internal family systems, and I know you guys employ some of that. So I just barely discovered what this was, and now everyone's talking about it. So what is parts work or internal family systems?
Yeah. Well, I think it goes well with the conversation of breath work, because breath work, when you're breathing, all this air creates space between you and your pain or your different wounds or these different parts of yourself. So you're continuing to breathe consciously, which is presence. And when you're doing this, you're able to be in what Richard Schwartz, who's the creator of IFS, calls the self with a capital S. And the self is the one that can look at, for instance, the child part and not blend with it. The blending is when the part speaks for you. And when you're in the place of self, you can speak for the part. So you're kind of it's either you're parenting your parts or they're parenting you. And if it's a young child parenting you, it's not going to be a great turnout. Yeah. My partner doesn't want to date a child, but she sometimes does. She pulls it out of me. And so a big part of it is identifying the different parts within yourself. And it's not multiple personality disorder, which they've actually created a new name for now. But it's identifying this internal family system. And the guy who created it, Richard Schwartz, started out as a family therapist. And then he recognized, wait a second. Because he did a study with, I think, a bunch of bulimic people and recognized they were all talking about this part of them, these different parts of themselves. And he used this family therapy to investigate these parts within the person. And he started asking questions, and then he started doing it on himself. And he had big breakthroughs. Yeah. And so he developed it, and it's pure genius. Yeah. So we often can create a space where a man can come into contact with his inner child who's wounded and didn't have his father, for example, and then can be held by a group of men in that, and loved and supported. And it's not coming from a place of dependency, because if it's you, for example, you're choosing to go in and connect with this part. The men are here to support you and hold your adult part in that.
Yeah, that's powerful. And it did sound, whenever I first heard it sounded schizophrenic almost. Like there's multiple parts of you battling.
Totally.
And I was like, aren't you supposed to be one actualized integrated person? And then you're just like, no, it's really easy to see when your inner kid gets scared of something and you self-sabotage or something like that. Just, again, my partner is very good at all of these things, and it's pretty easy to see once you're aware of it, an inner kid coming out, where it's like, you're not normally what I just trigger. Like, this is a different response than what usually happens. And there's like a hardcore protection mechanism that gets thrown up.
Yeah.
Usually.
Yeah.
Just very defensive for just out of character, quote, almost.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because you work a lot with IFS with your therapist, so and I just finished a training program where we did parts work. So I'm learning it, and we were like training in it, and it's really illuminating, right? The self is, and the way that I was taught is like there's the soul, right? And the soul is like this is the integrated wholeness of it, and there's these aspects of ourselves that are in front of the soul, right? And all the soul wants to do, all the parts want to do is work for the soul. And so when we're able to address whatever part is coming up, right, then that part wants to speak and it needs a voice. And it's hard for me to like, it's almost like theatrical, you know, and I get super heady with it. And I'm like, fuck, am I even like speaking from that place? I don't know, you know, it's really tough. And like, I shut down big time through this training program. Like I was getting so triggered. I'm like, how can I speak from soul? That just is preposterous right now for me. And they're like, well, who's speaking? And I'm like, fuck you, you know? Like, you know, and it's just the challenge of like, and the awareness of like, there's all these different parts. And we did a whole process of labeling all of our parts and putting it on a board. And I noticed my perfectionist is big online a lot, and the critic, you know, and that just gets in the way of me actually like doing things. So we've recognized that it's really important to at least like illuminate what is happening in the individual when we're doing processes, because it is so prevalent, you know. It's like they can speak about, there's this part of me here and there's this part of me here, and they feel like they're opposites, you know, and I actually feel confused and don't know. And when we're able to give space and voice to one of the parts, maybe that it'll soften and it'll kind of like, cool, thanks for the attention. I'm gonna take a step back now.
Right. Sometimes it's just attention. That's the weird part.
Yeah.
My partner, she does a lot of energy work, but she's just like, sometimes a piece of you just wants a hello.
Totally.
Just wants recognition, and then it'll calm down.
Yeah.
Which is very strange to think about.
Yeah.
That the awareness itself is the healer. Yeah.
Yeah, because it ties back to the suppression. You know, it's like, oh, that's I'm gonna just push that down. That's actually not needed right now. And that's when it gets louder, and and that's where it gets more sabotagey. Right. You know, because so I can do more with understanding it and wanting to be better at facilitating.
It sounds like it's in the zeitgeist. So people in general are going to become more interested in it. If it's now, like, if I hear about it, three different people tell me within the same week, I'm like, okay, people are looking at this. Same thing happens in the health world. Some new thing will pop up, and I'll hear it at the grocery store. Yeah. And I'll hear it. I always hear things online, but if I hear it in my life from like multiple people, I'm like, this has now caught the collective attention.
Which is wonderful.
And the one thing in all the messaging that I think sums up all of this well, that I always enjoy reading, is when you invite people to any of the experiences, it's come as you are. All of you is welcome. It almost makes me cry every time I read it. But it doesn't look, that there's nothing special about the words, but when you feel it, it's everyone wants to be accepted.
When you know it's
there's
really
nothing
there.
wrong with you. Yeah.
Do you have something you want to say?
I think just speaking to, there are these parts, kind of like you were talking about, the suppression, they use the term exile. And it really hits home for me, because typically we have what he calls a protector, and it's usually protecting, or there's a manager,
Right.
and they're protecting this part that's super hurt.
Yeah.
And for me, like an example is through adoption.
Mm.
You know, I have this big abandonment wound because my whole life I was like trying to figure out what was wrong with me to be adopted.
Mm-hmm.
That was the way that I was trying to make sense of it. And so I've, for so long, I've pushed it away. It's been in exile, and it's really just wanted like love and acceptance, you know? And so a big part of what we do is bring an empowerment or a relaxed state that helps connect to that sense of self. And then we can go in deep and cut into the wound, or work with the managers or protectors to connect with that part. And and there's also something to help identify the self, which he calls the 8 C's of self. And it's like, I can't remember them all right now, but it's like compassion, clarity, connection, and different things like that, and it really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Curiosity.
Yeah.
So it's a really beautifully mapped out practice.
Yeah.
And just a couple of books could be No Bad Parts. And also a relationship book on IFS is called You Are the One You've Been Waiting For. And I really highly suggest them.
Yeah. That's what she was going through. My partner was going through No Bad Parts yesterday. Like blowing through it. It was on my thing 2 days ago. Yeah. So things come when they're supposed to. So the Brotherhood has an in-person immersion or event coming up. You guys want to chat about that?
Totally. Yeah, thanks for that. November. Right now it's October. November 10th to the 12th, we're doing our first retreat. After 2 years, we feel like we've cultivated a community and a presence that we're we're hoping and feel good about it being supported. To create a container for a deep dive, and to really like highlight what it is to be in brotherhood, right? It's like, because like, we can go through processes and like we have that capacity, but really like it's the juice of what we want to be doing is just like, how can we bring men closer to each other in a healthy way, in a new way? And this weekend is an opportunity to be with others as we do deep work. Because it's like, we're going to do deep work. We're going to trigger each other. That's the whole point. And it's going to be a fun time. Like, we're going to have a good time. And like, to be with each other it'll be 2 full days. And we're going to do breath work. There's some sound healing that's going to be happening. We have our sacred fire circles. We're going to be doing like fun competitive games. Like asking the question, what is it to be masculine forward, right? Because we also have feminine energy that we'll be exploring too there. But what is it to be a healthy integrated masculine energy? And it might look like pushing on each other and wrestling, and getting this like this oomph, this energy pulsing, to move it through and to find out what's on the other side. I feel really excited about it and just being able to create an experience for a collective, so that the ripple effect, we're all about the ripple effect, creating the ripple effect that affects community at large, right? It's like grassroots. It starts small, and the individual then goes home, and from that place, they're positively impacting the world around them. And that's kind of been always our mission, is allowing and creating spaces for that positive impact ripple to be happening. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah. The first thing I want to do is kind of debunk this idea of healthy masculinity. Because to say healthy masculinity means that there is such a thing as toxic masculinity. And I think just masculinity in and of itself is a beautiful gift to the world. rather than there being something, an aspect of it that's toxic. There are men that do things that cause harm. It doesn't make for toxic masculinity. But we have a follow-up integration call after the retreat to help further, because we can come and have these big experiences, but if we return to the same environment and don't make changes to our life, we're going to repeat the same things. And the wisdom that we've gained turns into knowledge.
It goes backwards.
Yeah. And this is an opportunity to like meet your intensity with other men and to look at different aspects of your life that aren't working for you and to lean into what's going on there. What are the blocks? How are you sabotaging certain things? And from that place, you can gain clarity on how to move forward in your life. And there is a level of play that comes from breaking through all the shields and all the masks that happen with men. And once we get to that place, the level of play is absolutely incredible. So you can expect some ridiculous freestyling. I have this like thing in me that once I get there, all I can do is freestyle about poop
all the time.
I don't know if you have to include that, but
Totally include that.
and there's just a level of play that like I think does not get met in so many men's lives because of the shield that we carry. And it is one of the most nourishing things that I can think of happening for me in my life to support other areas of my life, is to really allow myself to play. And so we celebrate our lives and we celebrate each other, and it's not just about doing shadow work, it's also about celebrating and creating a connection with ourselves and how we speak to ourselves and how we talk to ourselves. And it'll be 30 minutes outside of Asheville on a beautiful piece of land with multiple ponds and streams and a beautiful renovated barn. And we're really excited.
Yeah. I mean, it's a chance for like men to come and like surrender, right? To totally like relax and to just be like. That's what I love about retreats is like you don't have to think about what you're eating,
right?
You don't have to think about what you're doing. Everything's laid out, and that's where the magic is. That's where the magic can be created when you're able to fully relax and just be there, and feel the support. Feel like we're gonna have me, Banks, Eloan, and Near to like be there for the men, holding the space and like being able to support one another with this time is going to be it's the medicine, right? It's the medicine that's really needed, and like what a great opportunity to do it in the name of brotherhood and our values, of compassion, challenge, and community. So like those are our pillars, and that's what we're bringing, right? And because we're such lovers in this group, and we're such warriors too, and so we're really bringing that into the fold. We're good at being soft, and we're enjoying being direct and challenging.
Yeah,
because we can see. Well, I don't want to say we can see. Banks is good at seeing through the bullshit.
Yeah,
I'm decent at seeing through the bullshit now, and I think that's a superpower, and it's something that we tiptoe around each other with. Like, oh, I don't want to trigger you, but I feel curious because I'm noticing this thing in you, and like I just had a phone call with a brother the other day, and I was like, yo, like you've said the same thing in breathwork the past couple times, like, do you want support? I'm like, I'm here to help you, to support you. And he was like, yeah, I'd love support, and it's just that invitation, and just that reflection of being like, yo, you keep saying the same thing, like, what's up? Guys appreciate that so much.
Yeah.
It's like, oh wow, you're paying attention. I feel seen. right? I have a need, I have a feeling of belonging. And we're in the business of trying to not be in business. Like, we want to help the individuals feel empowered enough that they don't really need us. Right? So like that's a big thing about this work and the retreat is like, how can we cultivate such self-confidence and empowerment for you to take with in your life? You know, so that you can rise up to be this person that you might think that you want to be, to live in the values and integrity that you want to live in. I just think that's super important to highlight about like the empowerment of the self, and with the community, with the brotherhood. You know, we empower each other through very different ways, whether that be collaboration, reflection, accountability. Yeah.
Big ones. Where could people sign up for, find details for the immersion, and just generally find information about breathwork and fire circles and all that?
It's newmoonbrotherhood.com. Yeah.
A lot is all the Facebook, the weekly events on there as well.
Yeah, you can sign up for our email list on our website, and we have a Facebook. We're in the process of trying to find a marketing team because we're not super.
Marketing is a nightmare.
We're good at making events and publishing them.
Yeah,
you can find it on our Facebook, Newman Brotherhood.
We just want to tend other fires.
Yeah,
that's true. We have a page, and then there's a group. But yeah, I think the best way is to go and sign up for our newsletter, and from there you'll find our email, and you can just email us, and we'll be able to direct you.
And
I have a feeling people will need or appreciate the support during holiday family season. Coming up.
And just recognize that, like, when you look out into the world, are you okay with everything you see? You know, and coming to this space and creating connections that could last for the rest of your life, and help you recognize how powerful and important it is to know the spirit of brotherhood, to experience it, and to be able to take it back into your communities and lead in that way for men that are alone and starving for connection.
Awesome. Anything we missed that you'd like to touch on?
There's plenty.
Can do a part 2.
This has been super fun. Super juicy.
Yeah. Thanks for getting deep with me. It was a pleasure, gentlemen.
Super great.
Thank you. Thanks for your questions and your curiosity.
The curiosity, I think, is my North Star. Like, if I ever get weird about anything, which is everything. If I get in my head, whatever, it's always curious about what's on the other side of it. Curiosity about what's on the other side of something works almost every time for me.
Yeah. It's the antidote for judgment.
Right.
If you're noticing you're judging someone or even judging yourself, like, just changes to curiosity.
Yeah.
That helps it.
So, find us, send us an email, a message. We're ready to play.
Yeah.